I'm Catherine Williams, 62, successful real estate mogul with beachfront properties across California. My son Thomas hasn't spoken to me in years since I refused to fund his fifth startup failure. Last month, he called out of the blue. No "Hi, Mom," or "I miss you." Just, "We're already married, Mom. Send me the key to the house in Malibu." No invitation to his wedding yet. He wanted to honeymoon at my prized beach house. I just smiled, hung up, and 3 days later, sent something special instead. Drop a comment where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear what I sent to my entitled son who thought he could use me one last time. I wasn't always wealthy. Far from it. I grew up in a small town in Ohio where my father worked at the steel mill and my mother waited tables at the local diner. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom house, and I shared a room with my 2 younger sisters. Money was always tight, but we never went without the necessities. My parents instilled in me the value of hard work and education. "Catherine," my father would say, "no one can ever take your education from you." I took those words to heart and studied diligently, earning a full scholarship to Ohio State University, where I majored in business. College was transformative for me. I discovered my passion for real estate during an internship with a small property management company. I loved everything about it: the negotiations, the potential for growth, the tangible nature of the investments. After graduation, I moved to Los Angeles with nothing but 2 suitcases and determination. Those early years in California were challenging. I started as an assistant at a boutique real estate firm, making coffee and answering phones while learning everything I could about the Southern California market. I lived in a tiny studio apartment and saved every penny. By age 27, I had my real estate license and was making my first sales. I met Thomas's father, Richard, at an open house I was hosting in Santa Monica. He was charming, ambitious, and worked in finance. We married after a whirlwind romance, and I was genuinely happy. When Thomas was born a year later, I felt like I had everything: a loving husband, a beautiful baby boy, and a growing career. But the fairy tale didn't last. When Thomas was just 3, I discovered Richard had been having an affair with his secretary. Such a cliché, but painful nonetheless. The divorce was ugly, with Richard fighting for assets he hadn't helped build. In the end, I kept my business and our modest home while he moved to New York with his new girlfriend. I was determined that Thomas wouldn't suffer because of the divorce. I worked twice as hard building my client list and reputation while still making time for school events and bedtime stories. I never spoke ill of Richard, even when Thomas asked why his father only called on birthdays and Christmas. "Your daddy loves you," I would say. "He just lives far away." My business grew steadily throughout Thomas's childhood. I specialized in high-end properties along the coast and developed a reputation for discretion that attracted wealthy clients. By the time Thomas was in high school, I had opened my own agency, Williams Coastal Properties, with offices in Santa Monica and Malibu. Success didn't come without sacrifices. There were nights I worked until midnight reviewing contracts, weekends spent showing properties rather than attending Thomas's soccer games, and vacations interrupted by client emergencies. I tried to make up for my absences with generous gifts and trips during school breaks, but looking back, I realized money was a poor substitute for time. As Thomas grew older, he became increasingly entitled. He attended the best private schools, drove a new car at 16, and never worried about college tuition. While I hoped he would develop my work ethic, I noticed he expected things to come easily. When he received B's instead of A's, he blamed the teachers. When the coach didn't give him enough playing time, he quit the team rather than work harder. I should have recognized these warning signs earlier, but like many parents, I saw what I wanted to see. My son was handsome, charismatic, and intelligent. Surely he would find his path and mature with time. I couldn't have been more wrong. Thomas graduated from UCLA with a business degree, and I was so proud. I thought he might join my company, learn the business from the ground up, and eventually take over. But he had other plans. "Real estate is boring, Mom," he told me. "I'm going to be a tech entrepreneur." I supported his ambition, even providing $50,000 as seed money for his first startup. a social media platform for college students to share class notes. The concept wasn't bad, but Thomas lacked the discipline to see it through. He spent lavishly on fancy office space and expensive dinners to network with potential investors. Within 8 months, the money was gone, with nothing to show for it. "These things happen," I consoled him. "Most startups fail. What did you learn from the experience?" "I learned I needed more capital," he replied, missing the point entirely. The idea was solid, but we were underfunded. Against my better judgment, I invested in his second venture 6 months later, an app for dog walkers. This time, I set clear expectations about budgeting and required monthly progress reports. For a while, Thomas complied, sending detailed updates and showing promising user growth. But then the reports became sporadic and vague. When I pressed for details, he became defensive. "You don't understand how startups work, Mom. We're pivoting our business model." The pivot turned out to be abandoning the dog walker app entirely to create cryptocurrency trading software, which failed spectacularly when the market crashed. Another $75,000 of my money disappeared. By this point, a pattern had emerged. Thomas would come to me with a new, can't-miss opportunity, promise this time would be different, and disappear once the money was in his account. His third startup was an artisanal food delivery service that never delivered a single meal. His fourth was a virtual reality gaming platform that existed only in elaborate presentation slides. Through it all, I continued to pay his rent, cover his health insurance, and fund his increasingly extravagant lifestyle. I bought him a condo in Marina del Rey as a 30th birthday present, hoping having his own property might instill some financial responsibility. Instead, he mortgaged it to fund yet another failed venture without telling me. The breaking point came when Thomas approached me about his fifth startup. He had met some investors who were willing to put in $200,000 if he could match it. "This is the one, Mom," he assured me. "We're developing an algorithm that will revolutionize stock trading." I had heard similar promises before, but what bothered me most was his assumption that I would provide the money without question. There was no acknowledgement of his past failures, no gratitude for my continued support, just expectation. For the first time, I refused. "Thomas, I love you, but I can't keep funding businesses that go nowhere. If these investors truly believe in your idea, ask them to increase their commitment." His reaction shocked me. He accused me of never supporting his dreams, of trying to control him through money, of wanting him to fail so he'd be dependent on me. None of it was true, but his words cut deep. "Fine," he said finally. "I don't need your money. I'll find it somewhere else." He walked out of my house that day, and our relationship was never the same. He stopped coming to family dinners, ignored my calls, and even missed Christmas that year. When we did speak, conversations were strained and superficial. He never mentioned the startup again, and I later learned from a mutual acquaintance that it had failed to launch. Over the next 2 years, our contact became increasingly sporadic. Thomas would reach out when he needed something: money for car repairs, advice on handling a landlord dispute, help when his credit cards were maxed out. I assisted where I could, always hoping each interaction might rebuild our relationship, but he would disappear again once his problem was solved. Meanwhile, my business continued to thrive. I expanded into luxury vacation rentals and property management. One particularly successful investment was a beachfront house in Malibu, a stunning 5-bedroom property with floor-to-ceiling windows, a private stretch of beach, and breathtaking sunset views. I purchased it as a distressed property, renovated it extensively, and used it for both personal enjoyment and as a high-end rental that generated significant income. I mentioned the Malibu house to Thomas during one of our rare conversations, inviting him to use it sometime. "You'd love it," I told him. "It's peaceful, beautiful, perfect for clearing your head and figuring out your next steps." He seemed interested, asking about the amenities and location, but never followed up to schedule a visit. That was the last meaningful conversation we had before his unexpected phone call about the honeymoon. The call came on a Tuesday morning as I was reviewing quarterly reports in my home office. Seeing Thomas's name on my caller ID was surprising. It had been at least 6 months since our last conversation. "Thomas," I answered warmly. "How are you? It's been too long." There was no preamble, no pleasantries. "We're already married, Mom. Send me the key to the house in Malibu." For a moment, I thought I had misheard. "Married? You got married, Thomas. I didn't even know you were engaged. Who is she? When did this happen?" "Her name is Victoria. We met 6 months ago. The wedding was small, just close friends." His tone was dismissive, as if these details were inconsequential. The pain of exclusion washed over me. My only son had married without even telling me, let alone inviting me to witness the most important day of his life. I hadn't met his wife, hadn't helped plan the ceremony, hadn't been given the chance to toast their happiness. "I see," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Congratulations. I would have loved to be there." "Yeah, well, it was very last minute." He paused, then continued with the real purpose of his call. "Anyway, we're planning our honeymoon, and I told Victoria about your place in Malibu. We'd like to use it for 2 weeks starting Friday." Friday, just 3 days away. No proper request, no consideration for whether the property was available or if I had plans for it. Just an expectation that I would hand over the keys to my multi-million-dollar beach house on demand. "Thomas, I'm happy for you and Victoria truly, but I'm hurt that you didn't include me in your wedding. Now you're asking to use my home without proper notice, without even introducing me to your wife first." His response was cold. "Mom, don't make this difficult. It's just a house that sits empty most of the time anyway. We need a place for our honeymoon, and Victoria has her heart set on Malibu." "It's not just a house, Thomas. It's my property, my investment, and my home away from home. I have regular clients who rent it, and there are procedures for booking and maintenance." "So cancel them," he said flippantly. "Charge me the rental fee if you want, though a wedding gift would be nice considering you didn't have to pay for the ceremony." His entitlement and lack of respect struck me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about the house. It was about years of taking without appreciation of expecting, without earning of treating me as a resource rather than a parent. "Let me think about it," I said finally. "I'll need to check the calendar." "There's nothing to think about. Just email me the code for the lockbox in the security system. And make sure the place is stocked. Victoria has expensive taste." I took a deep breath. "Thomas, I need to go. I have a meeting starting soon. I'll call you back." "Don't call, just text the information. We're busy with wedding stuff." Wedding stuff that hadn't included his mother. "Goodbye, Thomas." I hung up my hands, shaking with a mixture of hurt and anger. For hours afterward, I contemplated what to do. Part of me wanted to give in to provide the honeymoon spot and hope it might open a door to reconnection. But another part recognized that continuing to enable Thomas's entitled behavior wasn't helping either of us. That evening, I called my closest friend Diana and explained the situation. "Catherine," she said after listening patiently, "you've given that boy everything and he's shown no gratitude or respect. At some point, you have to stop being his ATM and start being his parent, even if that means saying no." "But it's his honeymoon," I protested weakly. "A honeymoon he planned without consulting you for a wedding you weren't invited to. He's a grown man who's made his choices clear. Now you need to make yours." Diana was right. For too long I had allowed Thomas to take advantage of my love and generosity. Each time I gave in, I reinforced his belief that he was entitled to my resources without reciprocating with even basic consideration. I spent a restless night weighing my options. By morning, I had made my decision. I would not be sending the keys to the Malibu house. Instead, I would send something else. something that might finally deliver the wake-up call my son so desperately needed. The next morning, I called the Ritz-Carlton in Laguna Niguel and booked a lovely ocean view room for Thomas and Victoria for 3 nights. It wasn't the 2 weeks in a private beach house they'd demanded, but it was a generous wedding gift under the circumstances, far more than most parents would offer after being excluded from their child's wedding. Then I sat down at my desk and wrote a letter. Not an email or a text, but an actual handwritten letter on the personalized stationery I used for important client communications. Dear Thomas and Victoria, I began. Congratulations on your marriage. While I am deeply hurt not to have been included in this significant milestone, I wish you both happiness and a long life together. I continued explaining that the Malibu house was not available, but that I had arranged alternative accommodations as a wedding gift. I included the reservation details for the Ritz-Carlton and a note that I had prepaid for certain amenities: breakfast each morning, a couple's massage, and a sunset dinner. I hope these few days will give you time to relax and reflect, I wrote. When you return, I would welcome the opportunity to meet Victoria and begin building a relationship with my new daughter-in-law. Perhaps we could start with dinner at my home. I concluded with an honest expression of my feelings about our relationship and my hopes for the future. Thomas, over the years, I have given you not only financial support, but unconditional love. What I've asked for in return is respect, honesty, and the opportunity to be part of your life. Going forward, I hope we can establish healthier boundaries and expectations. I will always be your mother, and I will always love you, but I cannot continue to be taken for granted. When you're ready to have a real conversation about our relationship, I'll be here. Until then, I wish you both well on your honeymoon and your new life together. Love, Mom. I sealed the letter in an envelope along with printed confirmation of the hotel reservation and a check for $1,000 as a wedding gift. Generous, but not excessive. For the final touch, I added a small box containing 2 items: a framed photo of Thomas as a child, laughing as I pushed him on a swing, and a key. Not the key to the Malibu house, but a symbolic one. A vintage key I had found at an antique shop years ago that had "New Beginnings" engraved on it. I packaged everything carefully and arranged for same-day courier delivery to Thomas's condo. Then I waited. The response came sooner than I expected. Just hours after the package would have been delivered, my phone rang. Thomas's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. "How could you do this to me?" he demanded without greeting. "Victoria is devastated. We had our hearts set on Malibu." "Hello to you too, Thomas," I replied calmly. "Did you read my letter?" "Of course I read it. A hotel room. For 3 nights. That's your idea of a wedding gift. It's a 5-star oceanfront resort, Thomas. Most people would consider it quite generous, especially coming from someone who wasn't even invited to the wedding." "We explained that. It was last minute and small." "No, you stated it was last minute. You didn't explain why I, your mother, couldn't be included in even the smallest ceremony. You didn't give me the chance to meet the woman you've chosen to spend your life with before marrying her." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Thomas," I continued, "this isn't just about the honeymoon or the wedding. It's about a pattern that's developed between us. You contact me when you want something. Money favors access to my properties, but you don't include me in your life in any meaningful way." "That's not fair," he protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it? When was the last time you called just to check on me? When did you last ask about my life, my business, my health? Relationships go both ways, son. I've given and given, but I can't remember the last time you gave anything in return, not even your time or consideration." More silence. I could almost hear him processing my words, perhaps truly hearing them for the first time. "The Ritz-Carlton isn't what we planned," he finally said, his tone slightly less combative. Life rarely goes exactly as planned, Thomas. That's a lesson most people learn early on. You can either appreciate what you have or waste energy lamenting what you don't. Another pause. Victoria's pretty upset. I'm sure she is. I'd be happy to speak with her directly to apologize for any disappointment and perhaps begin getting to know each other. I don't think that's a good idea right now, he said quickly. She needs time to calm down. An interesting response that told me more about Victoria than Thomas probably intended. Was she as entitled as my son had become? Or was Thomas misrepresenting her reactions to manipulate me? Well, when she's ready, I'd love to meet her. The dinner invitation in my letter stands. Thomas sighed heavily. I'll think about it. We still need to figure out what to do about our honeymoon plans. You have two choices, I said. You can accept my gift graciously, enjoy 3 lovely days at one of the best resorts in California, and perhaps use the remaining time to plan a more modest trip elsewhere. Or you can reject my gift, forfeit the reservation I've made, and make your own arrangements. Those aren't great options, he muttered. They're the options available to you. Thomas, at some point you need to understand that you're not entitled to everything you want simply because you want it. That's not how the real world works. Fine, he said after a moment. We'll take the hotel reservation, but I'm still disappointed, Mom. I know you are, and I'm disappointed too. Disappointed that I wasn't part of your wedding. Disappointed that our relationship has deteriorated to this point. Disappointed that you see me primarily as a provider of things rather than as your mother. The conversation ended shortly after, with Thomas promising to think about dinner when they returned, but making no firm commitments. It wasn't the breakthrough I had hoped for, but it was something. The first real conversation we'd had in years, even if it had been prompted by conflict. As I hung up the phone, I felt a mixture of sadness and resolve. The path to repairing our relationship wouldn't be quick or easy, but taking a stand was necessary. Sometimes love means saying no, setting boundaries, and requiring respect, even when that's difficult for both parties. I had sent my entitled son a gift he didn't want, but perhaps needed the reality that actions have consequences, that relationships require reciprocity, and that even a mother's love has limits when it comes to being taken advantage of. 3 days passed with no word from Thomas or Victoria. I assumed they had gone to the Ritz-Carlton, but I hadn't received any confirmation or thank you. I tried not to dwell on it, focusing instead on my business and the charity gala I was organizing for the local children's hospital. On what would have been the 4th day of their honeymoon, my assistant interrupted a meeting to tell me there was an urgent call from the property manager of my Malibu house. Ms. Williams, I'm sorry to bother you, said Mark, the property manager, when I called him back. But I thought you should know there's been an incident at the Malibu property. My heart raced. What kind of incident? Fire break-in? Someone attempted to enter using an invalid security code. The system locked down after 3 failed attempts as designed and notified our security team. They found a young couple trying to access the property. I closed my eyes briefly. Let me guess. My son Thomas and a woman named Victoria. Yes, that's right. Mark sounded surprised. The gentleman claimed to be your son and said you had given permission for them to stay there. When our security staff asked for verification, he became agitated. Agitated how? He yelled at our staff, threatened to have them fired, and demanded they override the security system. When they refused, the woman, Victoria I presume, became quite upset as well. Security had to ask them to leave the premises, or they would call the police. I felt a wave of embarrassment followed by anger. Even after our conversation, even after I had explicitly told him the house wasn't available and offered an alternative, Thomas had still tried to access the Malibu property. Worse, he had verbally abused my staff and tried to intimidate them into breaking protocol. Mark, I'm so sorry. Thomas does not have permission to use the property. You and your team handled the situation perfectly. No apologies necessary, Ms. Williams. These things happen. I just wanted you to be aware in case he contacts you about it. After thanking Mark for his professionalism, I ended the call and sat in stunned silence. What was Thomas thinking? Did he genuinely believe he could bully his way into my property against my explicit instructions? Had he assumed I was bluffing about the house not being available? I didn't have to wonder long. Within 20 minutes, my phone rang with Thomas's number. "How could you change the security codes?" he demanded without preamble. "We were standing there looking like idiots in front of the security guards." I took a deep breath, determined to remain calm. "Thomas, I told you the house wasn't available. I sent you an alternative accommodation which you agreed to take. I thought you were just being difficult. Victoria really wanted to see the beach house, so we thought we'd try anyway." "So you deliberately ignored what I told you, attempted to access my property without permission, and verbally abused my staff when they were simply doing their jobs. They were being unreasonable. I told them I was your son. Being my son doesn't give you the right to override my decisions or mistreat people who work for me. Those security protocols exist for a reason." "Whatever," Thomas dismissed. "The point is, we're now stuck without a proper place for our honeymoon. The hotel was only for 3 nights. His complete lack of accountability was staggering. No acknowledgement of wrongdoing, no apology for his behavior, just continued expectation that I would solve his problems. "Thomas, listen carefully," I said firmly. "You are not staying at the Malibu house. That decision is final. Your behavior today only confirms that I made the right choice." "Mom, you're being ridiculous. It's just a house." "No, it's my house. My property that I worked hard for, that I maintain and manage as part of my business. Your sense of entitlement to things you haven't earned needs to stop." "Fine," he spat. "Keep your precious house. Victoria's parents will help us book something else." "I think that's best," I agreed. "When you return from your honeymoon, if you're interested in having a real relationship that isn't transactional, I'm open to that conversation. Until then, I need some space." I ended the call before he could respond, feeling both drained and oddly liberated. For years, I had allowed Thomas to manipulate me with his demands and emotional outbursts. Standing firm, even though it was painful, felt like reclaiming part of myself. Later that evening, I received a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Williams, this is Victoria. I want to apologize for what happened today. Thomas didn't tell me you had explicitly denied permission to use the beach house. He said it was just a misunderstanding about the dates. I'm embarrassed by how we acted, and sorry for the trouble we caused your staff. We're staying at my parents' condo in Newport Beach now. I hope we can meet properly when we return." The message surprised me. Perhaps Victoria wasn't the entitled partner in crime I had imagined. Her willingness to reach out and take responsibility showed a maturity that Thomas had yet to demonstrate. I replied, "Thank you for your message, Victoria. I appreciate your apology and would very much like to meet you properly. Enjoy the rest of your honeymoon, and we'll arrange something when you return." It wasn't much, but it was a start. A small opening that gave me hope there might be a path forward with my new daughter-in-law, and through her possibly with my son as well. 2 weeks passed with no further contact from Thomas. I threw myself into work, finalizing a major property acquisition in Laguna Beach, and hosting a successful fundraiser that raised over $300,000 for the Children's Hospital. Life continued as it always does, even when significant personal relationships are in flux. Then, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. When I opened the door, I found Thomas and Victoria standing on my doorstep. Thomas looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot, while Victoria offered a tentative smile. "Hi, Mom," Thomas said hesitantly. "Is this a bad time?" The formality in his tone was unusual. Typically, he would have walked right in, making himself at home without question. This new approach, actually asking if it was convenient to visit, was a small but significant change. "Not at all. I replied, stepping back to let them enter. I was just having tea on the terrace. Would you like to join me? They followed me through the house to the back terrace, where I had been enjoying the view of my gardens with a pot of Earl Grey tea. Victoria immediately complimented the landscaping, noting the Japanese maple that was just beginning to show its fall colors. Thank you, I said, pouring tea for each of them. I've always found gardening therapeutic. Something about nurturing growth and seeing the tangible results of your care. It's beautiful, Victoria said sincerely. She was not what I had expected, quieter than I'd imagined, with thoughtful eyes and a gentle manner. She was well-dressed but not flashy, with an understated elegance that spoke of good taste rather than ostentation. After some initial small talk about the weather and Victoria's background, she was an art historian working at a gallery in Los Angeles. Thomas cleared his throat. Mom, we owe you an apology, he began, the words seeming to cost him considerable effort. Our behavior was inexcusable. We shouldn't have tried to use your house after you said no, and I shouldn't have spoken to your staff that way. I looked at him carefully, trying to gauge his sincerity. What brought about this change of heart? Victoria glanced at Thomas encouragingly. He continued. After the incident at the house, Victoria and I had a long talk. She helped me see some things about myself that aren't flattering. I might have been rather direct, Victoria added with a small smile. I was horrified when I realized Thomas had misrepresented the situation to me. I thought we had your blessing to use the house just with some miscommunication about dates. When I learned the truth, she shook her head. Well, it led to our first major disagreement as a married couple. Thomas looked down at his hands. Victoria pointed out that I've been treating you like an ATM, not a mother. She asked me how I'd feel if our future children treated me the way I've been treating you. He looked up, meeting my eyes directly for the first time. It wasn't a comfortable realization. I felt a surge of emotion, gratitude toward Victoria for her moral clarity, and cautious hope for Thomas, who seemed to be showing genuine self-reflection for the first time in years. Thank you for the apology, I said sincerely. It means a great deal to me. There's more, Thomas continued. I also want to apologize for not including you in our wedding. The truth is, I was embarrassed. Embarrassed of me? The hurt must have shown on my face. No, he said quickly. Embarrassed of myself? Victoria's family is... Well, they're different from what you know of me. Her father is a professor, her mother a pediatrician. They value education, intellectual curiosity, contribution to society. When I met them, I knew they would see through the image I've been trying to project. Successful entrepreneur, self-made man. I was afraid if you met them, the truth about my failed businesses and financial dependence would come out. Oh, Thomas, I sighed. I would never have embarrassed you that way. I know that now, he acknowledged, but I wasn't thinking clearly. I was wrapped up in my own insecurity, trying to impress Victoria's family with a false image of success. Victoria reached over to take his hand, which was completely unnecessary. I fell in love with Thomas, not his bank account or business acumen, and my parents are interested in character, not wealth. We actually had a very small ceremony at the courthouse, Thomas explained. Just Victoria's parents as witnesses. It wasn't the big event I led you to believe we were excluding you from. This revelation eased some of my hurt. A courthouse ceremony with just parents as witnesses was different from the elaborate celebration I had imagined them enjoying without me. We'd like to have a proper reception in a few months, Victoria added. Something small but meaningful with both our families. We were hoping you might help us plan it, actually. I'd be honored, I said, touched by the gesture of inclusion. Thomas seemed to gather his courage for one final admission. There's something else you should know. After our honeymoon, I've decided to make some changes. Victoria's father has connections at UCLA's extension program. I'm enrolling in their real estate development certificate program, and I've applied for an entry-level position at Westfield Development Group. A real job. I couldn't keep the surprise from my voice. Thomas actually chuckled. Yes, Mom, a real job with a regular paycheck. No more startups funded by your generosity. It's time I built something legitimate, even if that means starting at the bottom. Thomas, that's wonderful, I said, genuinely proud of this decision. Real estate development is a field with tremendous potential, especially with your business background. And your expertise, he added. I was hoping, maybe sometimes I could ask your advice? Learn from your experience. The olive branch was extended not in the form of a demand for resources, but as a request for knowledge and mentorship. It was exactly the type of relationship I had always hoped for with my son, one based on mutual respect and shared interests rather than financial dependence. I would like that very much. I told him, my voice thick with emotion. As the afternoon stretched into evening, we continued talking. About Victoria's work, about Thomas's new career path, about the possibility of dinner with Victoria's parents to properly meet the families. The conversation flowed more easily than it had in years, without the underlying tension of unspoken expectations and resentments. When they finally rose to leave, Thomas hesitated, then stepped forward to embrace me. I'm sorry it took so long for me to grow up, Mom, he whispered. Thank you for not giving up on me. I held him tightly, this son who had caused me so much heartache and yet remained the greatest joy of my life. I could never give up on you, I assured him. But I'm glad you're finally finding your own path. As I watched them drive away, I felt a profound sense of hope. The gift I had sent Thomas 3 days after his honeymoon call wasn't just a hotel reservation or a symbolic key. It was the gift of boundaries, of consequences for his actions, of the opportunity to become the man I always knew he could be. Sometimes, the most valuable thing we can give those we love isn't what they ask for, but what they truly need, even when that means saying no. It's been a year since that unexpected Sunday visit, and the changes in my relationship with Thomas have been remarkable. The real estate development program sparked a genuine passion in him that I'd never seen before. He completed the certificate with honors and has already been promoted once at Westfield Development. More importantly, our relationship has evolved into something healthier and more balanced. Thomas calls regularly just to check in, not because he needs something. He asks thoughtful questions about my business decisions and occasionally offers insights from his fresh perspective that I find valuable. Victoria has become a true daughter to me. We meet for lunch every few weeks, sharing our love of art and gardens. She gently keeps Thomas accountable when old habits threaten to resurface, and he clearly adores her grounding influence in his life. The reception we planned together was beautiful, an intimate gathering at my home with both families coming together to celebrate their union properly. Victoria's parents are as wonderful as she described, and we've developed a warm friendship. Last month, Thomas surprised me by suggesting a family weekend at the Malibu beach house. I think it's time I saw this famous property properly with permission this time, he joked. The weekend was delightful, with long walks on the beach, cooking meals together, and staying up late playing board games and sharing stories. As we sat on the deck watching the sunset on our final evening, Thomas turned to me with a serious expression. You know, Mom, I've been thinking about that day when you refused to give me the keys to this house. Oh, I said cautiously. It was the best thing you could have done for me, he said simply. If you had given in like you always did, before, nothing would have changed. I would still be the entitled, directionless person I was then. You weren't directionless, I protested gently, just looking for shortcuts. He smiled ruefully. A lifetime of shortcuts that led nowhere. But when you finally stood firm, when you showed me there were consequences to treating people, treating you, with disrespect, It forced me to look at myself honestly for the first time. "I'm glad something good came from that difficult time," I said. "More than good," he insisted. "It was transformative. I'm building a real career now, one step at a time. Victoria and I have a healthy relationship based on mutual respect, not what either of us can provide materialistically, and I finally appreciate the incredible mother I've always had." He reached for my hand. "Thank you for loving me enough to say no when that was what I needed to hear." As we watched the sun sink below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The journey with Thomas had been long and often painful, but we had finally arrived at a place of authentic connection. Sometimes the greatest acts of love aren't giving people what they want, but having the courage to give them what they need, even when that's difficult for everyone involved. In saying no to my son's entitled demand for the beach house, I had ultimately given him something far more valuable, the opportunity to become the man he was always capable of being. If you've ever had to make a difficult parenting decision for the long-term good of your child, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Has there been a time when saying no led to positive growth or change? Like this video, if you've experienced similar family challenges, subscribe for more real-life stories of transformation and share with someone who might need encouragement to set healthy boundaries with loved ones. Thank you for joining me on this journey of tough love and eventual reconciliation. Remember, sometimes the most valuable gifts we give aren't wrapped in pretty packages, but come in the form of necessary truths and boundaries.